Okay, good. You can start.
Is there like a second step or not? We're good to go?
This time not. The second step we will do manually this time.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. Okay. So we're ready to go. Hello to everyone. And please join in your palms, bow. The four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Okay, hello to you all. Probably some other people will pop in a bit. I want to continue where I left off, or roughly where I left off last week, and we were going back through the. Hold on a second. This compilation of articles on one mind. I shouldn't say articles. A lot of them are excerpts from treatises and sutras, and we're going to start with the Srimaladevi Lion's Roar Sutra. This particular sutra is important because it represents the Tathagata Garbha Sutra. Tathagata Garbha is the Buddha womb. And when we approach the practice, we understand that the Tathagata Garbha series of sutras were the last ones to come up, and they were clarifying the idea of emptiness, which was important, and clarifying this and establishing Buddha nature. When we say Buddha nature or emptiness or pratika sampada, cause and condition never fail, all of those are synonymous with the mind. But there's very subtle distinctions in terms of establishing this Tathagata Garbha theory and the theory of emptiness, because it isn't just simply that somebody can come up and say, oh, everything is empty. It has to withstand scrutiny, and scrutiny from other religions, from the philosophers from that time, as much as even contemporary philosophers who try to bang away at these Buddhist theories to try to indicate that there's something wrong with them. A lot of times it's Christian scholars that are doing that. They could even be Theravadan scholars. I've seen that happen as well. Or just people who are just scholars that look at it and try to challenge in some way the philosophical system and try to show or expose weaknesses. But this has been going on for so many years. The idea of this and the expounding on these theories is very, very great. We're not dealing with one book that's the fundamental book of the Buddhist. As you begin to practice, you realize how vast the system is of sutras, even before you get to Mahayana, how detailed there is of the Theravadan books, and then to the Mahayana books, it's extensive. There's quite a bit here, and some of them are in full accord, and others aren't. But it's okay. The idea that we had with Chan is that Chan served as this bucket to catch all of these theories that were coming into China, and this kind of a bucket that's there with a funneled all these theories in a way in which it made them compatible. And this is important. So it can look at the Abhidharma, it can look at the Madhyamika school, and also it can look at the Yogacara school, and all of these theories come in to Chan in a way that that works. And but it does take a bit of study. When we look at Buddhism from, let's say, a devotional way, we just say, okay, you need to, when you see the Buddha statue, bow to the Buddha statue and burn incense and present flowers, develop an altar, and be a good person. And that's Buddhism, be compassionate. But when we begin to look deeper and deeper as to what this means, we pull away from this kind of a preconceived idea that these bodhisattvas and Buddhas are separate from us. We don't understand that. And as a result of that, we create some kind of a devotion in the practice. But there are those who are interested in looking at this much deeper. They want to know what this all means. But in terms of examining it and saying, what does emptiness mean? Once you establish something like emptiness, you immediately question, okay, if everything is empty, then that means everything's nihilistic. So that's the immediate attack, saying that nothing matters, there's nothing there. But it isn't in this way. It is something that when we look at things, we see that there is this compassion component, but we don't really understand that compassion component that well and how it works. Thus, from the Mahayana sutras, we got into the Tathagata Garbha sutras and began to flesh out this Buddha nature. And because if we didn't, then we would say, okay, everything is empty, so there's nothing to do. Everybody go home, okay? And we were wrong. Best of luck to you. But it isn't in this way. The Buddhists carved out an explanation of this based on what Shakyamuni Buddha expounded upon. And so they took that, and the Theravadins took it to a certain point, and then the Mahayanas then began to really look at it and turn it in a way in which it was fully defensible. Meaning defensible means that it makes sense. So we could have a religion, and so that I'm not going to challenge religions at this point, but we could have a religion that we follow, but it may not be able to withstand scrutiny. And in the practice of Buddhism, it was able to withstand the scrutiny because of the detailed and profound wisdom that was used there. This wisdom wasn't created, it was articulating what Shakyamuni Buddha had described as the ability to understand in profound wisdom and apply it in a way that even transcended words and phrases, which is where we get with Chan, is that we use all of these words and doctrines to transcend, but we have to establish that there's something to transcend. And when we say, well, what does the word transcend mean? Transcending is not so much a metamorphosis, such as a worm turning into a cocoon, turning into a butterfly. It is just simply seen as that it's already there. There is this kind of a thusness there. And this thusness, which we can't name it anything, and even the word mind is not included in thusness. The thusness is what we see as truth. Now, in the Madhyamika school with Nagarjuna, he established this truth as being the truth of apparent reality and the truth of absolute reality. It's not easy to work those two together. We go, okay, well, what does that mean? Indeed, what does that mean? We have to kind of contemplate it and examine it. And when they asked him which one is the real truth, he does not respond. It is why the sutras, they say it's neither existent nor non-existent, because it transcends the idea of categorizing anything, because that would be what mind without the word mind would mean, or would be established, is that it doesn't have any kind of to show any credentials. It is already that. But then the philosophers, they scratch their heads, say, you guys are fudging on me, because I don't understand that. And then they say, you will never understand it because you're stuck in the samsara. You're stuck in the apparent reality, and you're trying to define something that has created this reality with reality, apparent reality words and concepts, but it's beyond those concepts. So as we begin to see this, you begin to see how Buddhism prevented itself from being put into a corner or trapped with these words, or presenting something that just doesn't hold water. What it does is, the way it holds water is by presenting emptiness. Now, this emptiness is not the emptiness that like an empty cup. And I wish we had a better word than that. I've asked people in Chinese, Kong, emptiness is kind of the same thing as emptiness in English, but it's not really that way. It's more that everything is included rather than something that's excluded. There cannot be anything that's excluded, because if it's excluded, then it cannot be mine. But if we say that everything belongs to mind, we have to follow along with that. And our teachings have to explain that. The reason I'm giving you this background is that when we go into the Queen Srimala Sutra, even this little bit, you're going to get lost right away. You're not going to be able to follow what's happening unless you understand the purpose of how it's presented in this way. So I'm going to try to go through this, and actually we're not maybe only get to this one passage of the Queen Srimala Sutra and not go on to anything else, because it is something that we have to kind of take a look at and see. But it goes to this very essence of what mind is. We on this side cannot conceive of the vastness, the infiniteness of mind. We only use these conceptual thinkings because these conceptual descriptions, when we say infinite, there's no borders to it. So if we say infinite light and we contemplate infinite light, it is in this way that there is not an edge to mind, a border to mind. I remember when I was younger and they came out with the first games. I don't know if it's still the same way now or not. I haven't played a video game for, I don't know, many, many years. But I remember riding a motorbike in a desert in a game, and you'd come up and then you'd end up hitting the side of a mountain. You couldn't go further. You just stopped right there. And you went, well, like, what happened? Because the game and its artificial intelligence could not create an infinite terrain. It had to stop somewhere. So at some point you run into it. That is samsara. Samsara is the same way. We will run into the edge of it, because how do we run into the edge? We can run into the edge spatially or temporally or mortally. That's it. that's the end of the ride. And you go, is it really? But in apparent reality, it is, because that's the end of you. This then causes great consternation and great fear on people who do not accept Buddhism, because they go, I don't want to do that one, because if I believe in that, I'm finished. And they say, but compare it to Christianity. In Christianity, you get one shot at this world, and then when you die, it's either thumbs up or thumbs down. And thumbs down means eternity in hell. So this is different than the idea of this samsara, where one can go up and down these realms, from the heaven realm all the way to the hell realm. All of this is conceptual. All of this is created by the mind. We don't understand that. We think that we create all of these things, but we miss it. And that was the very first thing that Shakyamuni Buddha presented after sitting under the Bodhi tree. And he told everybody about the 12 nidanas, the cause of law of origination. But nobody understood it. It was too deep. So then he went to more traditional way of saying, well, you suffer, you should know what the cause of suffering is, and then there's a way to stop that suffering. And then there is this enlightenment, this path. And so the people go, where do I sign up? That's a good deal. And then later, that made people feel comfortable. So there's two types of teachings in Buddhism, and the masters always talk about this. They say one of them is for those silly people that just don't get it, and we tell them that just so that they can calm down, or they won't have fear. One master said it's just like giving a pacifier to them to stop the baby from crying, and little by little bringing them up so that they can understand that. And there's many people who want us to go really, really slow. Don't scare the people. If you talk like this, Gilbert, you're going to scare the people that, they're not ready to realize that they don't exist. You can't do that. So what are we going to do? Just fake it and give them something that just keeps having them come back in the cycle until they have this perfect being, and they realize, somebody should have told me this, 10,000 lifetimes before. How come I didn't learn this? You know how many times I've just been a beetle, and not the rock and roll beetle, but the one that crawls along the ground. I could have skipped all of that. So we look at that, but you see that there's different ways in which things are taught. In this class, which is called Mind Work, what I present to you is this shortcut, which the masters actually called it. It's a shortcut. The shortcut is to know that everything is created by the mind. So we understand that. We believe, we as sentient beings believe that we create the things around us. We create our money. We create our money problems. We create the world. We do all of these things. And so we are the ones that will have some kind of salvation. But the truth of that is that if you cling to the life and being, personality, or ego, there's no salvation. You don't get dumped down the dumpster, but you just keep coming back and coming back like a never-ending cycle. But you can end it by seeing that all that is happening is created by the mind. It is why it's referred to it as this world as an illusion, a phantasm, or a dream, So this analogy helps us to be able to understand that this world is not as fixed as we think it is, but it's a dream. It is why they talk about awakening. One of the very first treatises that came through, or you could call it a sutra, is the awakening of the faith in Mahayana. Now, most people would look at that and say that we're awakening the faith in the study of Mahayana. But at that time, when that came out, there was no Mahayana. There was no Mahayana school or category or anything. The term Mahayana referred to as the Buddha mind. So it's an awakening in the faith that it's the Buddha mind, not the Buddha somewhere in some celestial heaven. Buddha has the ability to appear in a celestial heaven or hell or anywhere a Buddha can be, because it's all mind. But it is not something as, sorry, it's not something that there is the supreme being that does this. It is just the manifestation of mind. We don't understand that. And so we think that the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas are apart from us. But when we see things in the correct way, then we're clear about it. We understand that this very mind that you're using to listen to me right now, this very mind is the Buddha mind. There is nothing apart from it. When we see things in this way, this is called right view. With right view, it changes everything in terms of how you see things. But not only that, but with right view, when you read the sutras or the treatises, they all begin to make sense. Without right view, you cannot do that. It won't make sense. So let's get into this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in terms of this, okay? And so the first part reads this. This is, again, Queen Srimala's Lion's Roar Sutra. It's a Tathagata Garbha class sutra. And Queen Srimala is there, and she's presenting to the Buddha her understanding of Buddha Dharma. And so the Buddha is listening to her at this point. What's very good, and especially to all of the female practitioners that are here, this is a representation that, no, you don't have to be a man to become enlightened. You can, anyone can, because we all possess Buddha nature. So this was very important. We don't have to be reborn as a man to do it, or that a monk, a nun can easily do it. And here's a queen coming and showing. So this is much more liberated than the ancient, the elder practice, because here we're seeing this and saying everyone has an ability to do this, and to no exclusion of any sentient being, even those that are so evil, they're in a Viki hell. They have not lost their Buddha nature. They've just simply misplaced the idea that they have a Buddha nature. Even if in hell they recognize they have Buddha nature, they would still have to exhaust the karma that's there before they get out of hell, because this is the way things work. But let's see what Queen Srimala has to say. She's referring to the Buddha. O Lord, the wisdom of the Tathagata Garbha is the Tathagata's wisdom of emptiness, sunyata. O Lord, the Tathagata Garbha has not been seen nor attained originally by all the arhats, pratika Buddhas, and powerful bodhisattvas. So she's saying that these powerful personas, they have not attain this. So then you have to scratch your head and say, well, what chance do I have if they can't get it? But if we go back to the Heart Sutra, which is this clarification, it goes through and says there's nothing to attain. Why is there nothing to attain? Anybody know? Put your hand up if you know. Come on, you can do it. Tori, if you can unmute her. She's still
She
muted.
can mute herself now.
Unmute yourself, please.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Because we already possess the Buddha nature, so
There it
there's
is.
nothing to.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. We all have Buddha nature, so there's nothing to attain. This was a major progression in the practice of Buddhism and in establishing Mahayana Buddhism, is that we have this Buddha nature. This is very, very important that we know that we have this. So that's why these high-level personas cannot do that, because they cannot be defined by reaching something that they already have. The very fact, in terms of this, then in the trickle-down theory, is that you possess Buddha nature as well, along with your dog or your cat. So you have to take care of them. Don't harm them or anybody else, because all you're doing is walking around in this apparent world. But all the people that you see, all the animals that you see, all the critters that you see, if you see ghosts, them too, all of them possess Buddha nature. So we start with this as a given. Why do they possess Buddha nature? Because if there's something that has a consciousness, even though the consciousness itself is empty, it has to have access via mind to operate. What we do is we lose sight of our original nature by clinging to the consciousness rather than to from where the consciousness comes from. As a result of that, then we lose our ability to utilize wisdom. That's what the Heart Sutra was all about, was, hey, let's go back to school. Let's do wise things in our life. Wisdom begets wisdom. And so when we see this, we say, okay, this is how we look at the world. And so if you see everyone in the world, why would you want to do harm to any of them? They're just Buddhas that are slumbering in this apparent world. They're ignorant, but it doesn't mean you have to kick them or call them stupid. Maybe the lifetime before you were with them. And this lifetime, because of your affinity, you have to bring them up. Okay. Oh Lord, and this is Queen Srimala still talking, she says there's two kinds of wisdom of emptiness with reference to the Tathagata Garbha. Now the term Tathagata Garbha, the first part is thus come, or it can sometimes be referred to as Tathagata, which is thus gone, just mean thusness, and Garbha means womb. So from this womb, everything manifest. It just doesn't appear just simply out of nothing. There's something still there. We don't see it. We don't understand it. This weekend, I was kind of equating it to, let's say, a big screen TV, that there's appearances on the screen. And we take those appearances to be real. We look at them and say, oh yeah, this is what we call it, lifelike. The colors are lifelike. And then we don't understand that all of those colors are being manifested and images being manifested through some electronics that make these images appear. All we see is the images. So we're convinced that those are real. Now, I know that probably not to you, maybe to some other lower being, they might be confused with that, but we use that as a modern day analogy to see this and to say that there's something behind it. It just simply, a TV could not work without all of this other information coming in. And if you want to change the channel, you can see something from last week, a game from last week, or prognostications of a future one. A real Buddha TV would give you access to everything. It would be, oh, what do we want to see that's going to happen? Boom. Oh, look, Shakyamuni Buddha is going to become a Buddha in a few more lifetimes, says Dipankara Buddha. It can see that. It can see what's happening. Don't take that left turn. Why? You'll find out. So it can see all of that in a single instant. This is how mind works. We don't know that. So we're confused about it. We continue. So it's saying the Tathagata that is empty is separate from, free from, and different from all the stores of all defilements. So it's saying, now we're talking about this store. The store is a reference then to the Yogacara and this Alaya Vijnana storehouse. And so that all of those things are there, and they come in to being via the seventh consciousness. I don't want to go into discussing that in too much detail, but just to show you what they're talking about when they're talking about stores, all these potentialities, we could call them, and that it's saying that it's separate from them. So hang in there, though. And the Tathagata Garbha, excuse me, hold on. That is not empty, is not separate from, and not free from, and not different from the inconceivable Buddha Dharmas, more numerous than the sands of the Ganges River. So they're going, wait a minute, didn't they just say that they were different, but now they're saying they're the same? What the heck is going on? What does it mean? Does anybody want to venture in and ponder what that means when they're saying that they're different from these defilements, but they're actually the same? This is a bonus. Yeah, Eon, go ahead.
Well, it's saying that there are two kinds of wisdom with emptiness. And the first that is empty and free from, different from the store of all defilements, that has to do with phenomena, illusory appearances. And the Tathagata Garbha that is not empty and not different from the inconceivable Buddha Dharmas, that is just mind. So that's kind of like the relative and the absolute truth.
So he's referring to the Madhyamika school and looking at this and seeing that there's these two truths, which Nagarjuna didn't say one was truer than the other. This is very, very important, because this is where we have to jump from. We can bounce off of it and go, I don't understand. I'll come back in a few more lifetimes and try it again. Or you can go, you know what? I want to work on this. I got to see this. This is what appears to be conundrum, but it really isn't. it's there, and it's philosophically impeccable, and the philosophers, historians, religious scholars, they all try to work at this and try to break it down and try to do it. But Nagarjuna was good because he didn't take a position and say one is more equal than the other one, or one is real and the other one's not real. He called them the two truths, which is what Queen Srimala is demonstrating here, is that yes, the foundation is there. And what do we call that foundation? What is that? There's many names you can do it, so you can't miss if you answer this. Anybody? What is the foundation called? Nobody knows. Nobody. All right, well, you go to Eon for 50 points.
You could probably use the Dharmakaya.
So he's been listening to me, he struggled listening to me for the last 3 or 4 days. So I guess something bound to stick to him. So, some of this stuff is kind of like peanut butter. It'll stick to you if you let it, but you got to bite the sandwich. And so it's sticking to him. And this is good. It's the Dharmakaya. So what is the Dharmakaya? The Dharmakaya is the mind ground. The mind ground, for double bonus points, what's another name for the mind ground?
Is it Ekayana?
Vijay, say it.
Ekayana?
Ekayana. Yes and no. I'll give you a partial points for it. Ruth, you're jumping up and down. Are you going to weigh in? You want to, are you going to? No.
Jumping up and down because of the bounce off of the computer.
Oh, okay. I thought you were getting excited. You wanted to say anything. Anybody else want to weigh in? Michael, go ahead.
Tathagatagarbha.
There it is. You see. So these two are listening and beginning to get it. It is in this way. It is the storehouse that the Yogacharans called the alaya, but it is this womb where everything comes from. It's the back of the TV set. Everything comes up and acts as there. It is the mirror in which all of things that are appearing is enabling them to appear. When we say a mirror, it isn't like a dead mirror. It is, you have to see the back side of it that enables all of these things to manifest. And how could it not do that? Because it is just simply that way that's how mind works. So it's clear about that. And so they're talking about this Dharmakaya or Tathagatagarbha. This is the mind ground. What we use to see this mind ground is also mind. And so those looking at it, I use the diagrams to show like half globes, but it isn't really in that way. That whole globe in itself, we could say, if it was an organism, it would be a different organism than a human being. It would be something that is intimate with everything. That's why we say the Buddha knows you, but you don't know the Buddha. You can't know the Buddha. Your head would explode. But the Buddha knows you. The Buddha's manner of perception is different than that of a sentient being in a dream that's linear and has to keep switching like binary, ones and zeros, seeing this and seeing that, happening so quickly, what they appear to be happening quickly, but to the Buddha, it's excruciatingly slow. in terms of what's happening. So we think that there's a lot of things happening, but to the Buddha mind, it's glacial in terms of its movement. It moves so incredibly slow. And when you begin to practice the Buddha mind and the Buddha perception, things around you begin to slow down because you are able to access more information in the present moment than you normally could. So you can see things very, very quickly as to what could happen. This will happen, this will happen, because you know all aspects of it. Well, maybe not all aspects, but all aspects in that particular environment that will help you to choose, or initially choose, and then later just accord with the environment. That would be the Buddha mind, just according with it. As we begin to progress to practice, we are choosing, making a knowing choice to choose the Buddha over the self. Okay, now we'll continue on. The Tathagata is neither life nor death. The Tathagata is separate from the condition. The condition here is whatever appears on the screen is condition. It is not like a slide from the old slideshows. It goes away. And that's condition. It appears there only because of whatever is happening around you. My hand comes up because I'm making some emphasis of something, but it's condition. It may be condition of me to make emphatic points. So I say, hey, move your hand, but it's not there now. If it was part of mine, it would always be there. And I go, oh, I wish I didn't put that there. Now it's going to be there for eternity. But it doesn't work in that way. But we see the world in that way. And what here that messes everything up is the ego. I can't see anything. Why? Because the ego is right there blocking everything. It clouds things, it obscures things. When we let go of that, then the mind is clear. The Tathagata is eternal and unchanging. Sometimes it refers to the term immutable, which is a pretty good word. It's kind of a fancy word, but immutable means it doesn't change. There's nothing that affects it. And so it's something that is beyond any concept. And because of it, it's always there. Therefore, the Tathagata Garbha is the basis, the support, and the foundation. And so this is important because it says it's the basis, it's the reason things appear. Whatever's appearing, whether it's sacred or profane, it is the support of it, it manifests it, and it's the foundation. We don't know that because we don't understand. We only, in the dream, we have good dreams and bad dreams. So we don't understand that all of this is happening because of causes and conditions. If we were not ignorant, it was like somebody's going, I'm scratching, and the rash is getting bigger, and then you start scratching on this side, and now the rash is on this side too. And so what is the cure? You don't scratch. But we're not sharp enough as sentient beings to figure that out. Whatever our desires are, our aversions, or whatever it is, we're constantly scratching them to try to make them go away and making it worse. So we have to see with wisdom that this is like being in samsara is like playing a game of tic-tac-toe in which you move second. And moving second almost ensures you that you're going to lose. So the only way that you can win the game is by not playing it. We don't know that. I even got that reference from an arcade movie with Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy called War Games. I don't know how many years ago when they were like teenagers, but it makes sense. The only way to win the game is not to play it. And what they did was they programmed a computer to play tic-tac-toe moving second. And it was going to set off a Holocaust, but it stopped and realized it didn't make sense. You could not win the game. And so the thing is that we have to see in this way how mind works. If we understand it, then we know, okay, in a snap of the fingers, we can be liberated. We don't have to do 50,000 bows each day for 20 kalpas. We could do that, and probably at some point it would pay off. It about the same time as a slot machine would pay off in Las Vegas, but you don't need to do that. You just need to see through to mind to see how the game is played. And if you can do that, I mean, who wouldn't want to cut 20 kalpas off of their practice time, right? That makes sense. All you got to do is see how it works. Use the wisdom that you have. We didn't realize when we came into this world, we already have a virus in the program. But we have this antivirus program. Not only that, the antivirus program is simply saying that the antivirus doesn't exist. Voila, it's all done. Don't pay attention to the ego, the personality, or the life and being. Pay attention to your innate wisdom. You still navigate this body around, but you can stop at 2 donuts. You don't have to eat the whole dozen donuts. That's wisdom, right? Okay, maybe 1 donut. But in any case, it's wisdom to work in this way. Why can't we do that? And they say, because since time immemorial, we've been constantly succumbing to our habitual patterns. Sometimes people say, oh, to be enlightened like that, you lost the freedom of choice and you're just like a robot. No. To the opposite, you have the freedom of choice to choose the Buddha every time. That's not being robotic. That's being compassionate. That's being wise. Robotic is using the default program from the habitual patterns that constantly presents problems to you, constantly presents fears and suffering, aversions, desires that you don't really need. Oh Lord, the Tathagata Garbha is not separate, not severed, not liberated from, and not different from the inconceivable Buddha dharmas or inconceivable appearances. So the Buddha is not separate. This is the idea of this emptiness. So they're defining what emptiness is, not empty like vast space empty, but an intimate mind where there's no space between anything, including space. You go, how could that be? Because it's all mind. Even the space is mind. So there's no gaps there. There's gaps in samsara, but not in mind. The reason there's gaps in samsara because it's a dream. But mind is immutable. It never changes, but it includes everything. Oh Lord, the basis, support, and foundation of conditioned phenomena is things that come up, that anything that moves, including your mind, is conditioned, which are severed and separate from and different from the Buddha Dharma. So all of these things that are conditioned and separate from the Buddha Dharma are also the Tathagata Garbha. They're included too. This is what we go back to what Ian picked out, the saying, the two truths. The apparent reality is, it has to be part of the absolute. If not, then one of those truths would be wrong. That's what the truth is. This is this profound truth that all the conditioned phenomena is part of mind as well. We didn't understand that. They go, how can something so profane as killing and murdering and sickness and death be part of mind? But it is in this way. There's not a supreme being making these morality choices and looking and going, we need to put a fig leaf on that statue of David. That's profane. It doesn't do that. The mind does not interfere with the dream. Whatever's in there, it's there to this extent that it does not interfere with its own way of doing things, which is causes and conditions never fail. But the interesting part of that, where we get to Buddha nature, is that it's still concerned about what is happening in the dream, even though knowing that that dream is an illusion, it is concerned about that. And on the weekend, somebody was asking me about that and saying, if everything's a dream, then why do we have to worry about it? This is kind of a standard response type thing. And again, I was asking a person if they had a roommate, and they said yes. And I said, what would you do if you saw your roommate in the midst of a dream thrashing around? And this guy was kind of a bit of a wise guy, and he'd go, I'd just watch him. And I go, no, you wouldn't. You're just saying that because you already know what I'm going to say. And I said, I know you. And so he then, realized what mine was, that I could read his intentions. So finally, he said, well, of course I have to wake him up. And then at that point, it was already checkmate, because the next question is why it's just a dream. It doesn't exist. Why does it matter if somebody wakes up another person, or the Buddha sets into motion to wake up other sentient beings caught in this illusory dream? What does it matter? But it does matter. That's the heart of the Buddha. That's the Heart Sutra. That is what Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi means, and I don't care what religion you are, you have to show compassion. It has to be this compassion that is unbridled. It's not something that we condition it and say, okay, I'll show compassion to these people over here, but the bums on the left side of the street, but the bums on the right side, I don't like right-sided people, so I'm not going to show compassion for them. That wouldn't make any sense. The Buddha looks at it and says, if somebody is down and out, even Mao Zedong, Hitler, who more needs compassion than somebody so ignorant as to cause so much suffering. It doesn't mean they get a get out of jail card. They still have to do all of the time that they're going to be doing, you know, in the lower realms of hell, but they still possess Buddha nature. This was very, very important aspect of progression in Mahayana and Tathagata Garbha theory, was that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. You don't lose it. You can't lose it. You can't lose your Buddha nature. How could you do that? If you did, you would be an anomaly in outside of mind, but there's nothing outside of mind. So the only way to make this work and withstand philosophical attacks is this adjustment in Buddha Dharma, to say that everyone had Buddha nature. Before, you could lose your Buddha nature. You could lose the ability to do that if you killed a Buddha, you know, or did something horrendous. You lost it. You're gone, and you're out of the club. But where would you go? There's no place. There's no purgatory in mind. There's just sliding up and down these illusory realms of existence. So the reason that I present Buddha Dharma is because it makes sense. It covers these issues that could trip up any kind of a faith system. Okay, we continue. Now, I'm not going to get to the end of this. The Tathagata Garbha is without any prior limit, is non-arising, is indestructible, accepting suffering, having a revulsion towards suffering. Remember, I was talking about there's a revulsion towards suffering. This is called karuna. It accepts the suffering, which we could say metta, and accept all their suffering. We've got to help, but has a revulsion towards this, saying, and what is the revulsion towards suffering mean? Anybody? I mean, this is like pretty deep stuff, so I'm throwing you in really deep, but what would you think the revulsion of suffering means? Yes, go ahead, Tori.
It means to have compassion.
And something before it. What produces compassion? Wisdom.
Wisdom.
Yeah, wisdom. So it's this wisdom that there's a revulsion of ignorance, this fundamental ignorance, and it's looking at it and going, you know, this does not need to happen. If these Buddhas can wake up, these Buddhas that possess this so-called consciousness, that is really the Buddha mind, if they wake up, they don't have to experience this suffering. So there's a revulsion there, and the revulsion is because of the wisdom that says they don't need to do that. So good. And aspiring to nirvana. Lord, the Tathagata Garbha is not a substantial self. That's what I've been telling you this evening. There's no self, there's no higher self. When we practice, try to purify the self or make a higher self, it won't work. We'll be better citizens of samsara. And maybe in a future lifetime, we might hear right view because of it, but there's no substantial self to the Buddha. Okay. And which is kind of interesting. nor a living being, nor fate. The Buddha does not have a fate. It is why Master Ling Chi said, I've studied and searched for 12 years for this so-called thing called karma, and I haven't been able to find anything even as close to the size of a mustard seed of it. He's speaking from mind, not from samsara. He's speaking to this ultimate truth, this revulsion of suffering, because seeing clearly there is no karma there. The karma only applies to these illusory sentient beings like puppets going through this sad show. And when it's seen exactly as it is, that's the liberation. The goose is out of the bottle. It doesn't have to be there because there was no bottle originally. And actually then once the goose is out, the goose is cooked, the goose too disappears. If you remember, this was the analogy in the Buddha Nature Treatise when in the consciousness where the magician had conjured up a tiger, but then seeing through the illusory nature of the tiger, knowing that it's conjured, the tiger devoured him because he too was illusory. And so the whole idea collapses. This is what they're saying here, is that there's no substantial self. There's not somebody, no image of a Buddha sitting on a throne somewhere, nor a person. And I had in my notes, there's no God, supreme being, no, or supreme consciousness. The Tathagata Garbha is not a realm for living beings. Very interesting. So the Tathagata Garbha, the Dharmakaya, is not a realm for living beings. If you wanted to pass through, penetrate through the mirror, you cannot take this body with you. I've been saying this for many years. You have to give up the body. It doesn't mean that if you become enlightened, they go, what happened to Gilbert? And there's just this skin bag that's there and go, oh, he passed on, you know, and there's just this rubbery body there, you know, in his clothes, just like somebody let the air out of him. It doesn't go that way. We see that the body belongs to the samsara, but the samsara belongs to the mind. But the body cannot be, is made out of the mind, but is not made out of the part that makes things. It's a dream, a bubble in a stream. It's an illusion. That's the difference. We have to see that. That was where Nagarjuna was pointing to in all of this. This is not easy. So it's not a realm for living beings who have degenerated into the belief of a substantially existent body. So they've degenerated, and what is being degenerated is the Buddha being Buddhas in the dream that have devolved from the Buddha nature, which they still have, but are convinced that they are an ego, a personality, or a life and being. That's why he says that they degenerated into the belief of a substantially existent body, or for those who have contrary views or who have minds bewildered by emptiness. So contrary views would be somebody saying, oh, there's a supreme person or there's supreme beings or whatever, and that there's this. And they're saying for them, they don't understand that they're an illusion. And then again, those bewildered by emptiness, meaning if you don't understand emptiness, you will fear it. you will think that this is an annihilation. It's not annihilation. It's an absorption. It's a self-absorption into mind itself. It comes in. What is seen then is that this corporal body is not other than made out of the fabric of mind. But we don't understand that part. So we're confused by emptiness. To understand emptiness requires a lot of contemplation. It's not so easy. A lot of people talk about emptiness, but have no idea what it means. So never think that you truly understand emptiness. And that includes you, Gilbert. You don't ever think that you've got it complete. You have to just keep looking and looking and looking. Oh Lord, the Tathagata Garbha is the womb of the Dharmas, the womb of all phenomena, the womb of the Dharma body. So it's also the womb of mind, the transcendental womb where things change. They transcend in simply awakening to the fact that this is all mine, an inherently pure womb. So originally it was not impure. This Tathagata Garbha that is inherently pure is the inconceivable realm of the Tathagata that has been contaminated by extrinsic defilements and other virulent defilements. It's kind of interesting because here they're saying extrinsic, and this goes back, kind of throwing it into apparent reality. And that only applies in apparent reality, that kind of an experience. But the term virulent is interesting because if we have a virus, if I have the ego virus, I can infect all of you, right? No, you're dumb. No, you're dumb. Then I start telling people, and then you'll all be calling each other dumb. You caught the ego virus. So these are virulent defilements, and then they keep going and going like a raging fire. The Buddha, with extreme joy, praised her. So the Buddha is looking at her and going, good job. Like, that was really, really good. Yes, it is so. It is so. The fact that there is defilement in mind that is inherently pure is difficult to comprehend. So the Buddha here is saying, hey, that's a tough one. How do you understand that there's this defilement? How can the mind create defilements of its own making, of its own dreams? And so this is difficult to understand. There are two subjects that are difficult to completely comprehend. They are the mind that is inherently pure and the fact that the same mind has been contaminated by defilements. So we stop there and you look at it, and that's kind of where you have to contemplate that. And in apparent reality, you will not find a satisfactory answer. You have to contemplate so that you can transcend the idea of the samsara existence, and the answer will be presented. But again, it's not something that in this part gives up its wisdom quite readily. You have to work on it. But the very fact that you listen to this is very, very deep, very profound. And it's not something that is easy to comprehend. And that's what the Buddha was saying. It's not easy to comprehend because the comprehension comes from that which is without words and phrases. But I really thank you for hanging in there and listening to this, because if we went through and just read it, you would pick up 5%, maybe 10% of the importance of this little passage. But this passage is so incredibly filled with wisdom that this is how one studies. And when you look at it and you see something like that, you know, you go through and you mark up the page. Everything that you do, you just mark it up everywhere. And you go back and you bold it and do things. And just so that none of that escapes you. And the first times I read this, I went, this is interesting, but I'm not sure I've got it. And I read again and read again and read again. Each time, a little bit more stuck, a little bit more of that peanut butter stuck there. And that's the thing is that you have to create the mind environment for the study of Dharma. And if you can do that, it will work very well. So thank you. I went over time. I apologize for that, but I'll answer your questions now. Thank you very much. Let me talk. Okay, Tori.
I guess I'm still trying to learn the terminology, especially like Sanskrit terminology. What is the difference or the relations between Tathagata Garbha and Buddha nature? Are they talking about two different things or the same thing?
Same thing. Same thing. When we talk about the Tathagata, it is just when we talk about it, it is the thusness of mind. The Buddha nature is its characteristics of the mind. So, but it's not separate, but it's just the characteristics of the Buddha mind. The Buddha mind has a revulsion to suffering, for instance. So that's fine. So the Tathagata Garbha will produce causes and conditions to try to remove that suffering. That's innate in the mind, or the intrinsic in the mind is this compassion. So we begin to see things, and then the terminology isn't too far apart from each other. We just have to see how it works. But yeah, your question is a very, very good one. So thank you.
Thank you.
David.
Well, that was really something.
It was nothing at all.
Okay. I had a question. I was trying to comprehend where you were talking about the womb of the Dharma body, and you mentioned that that's the womb of mind. I have a hard time even comprehending that. Isn't mind just exist without a womb, or I don't know.
I understand what you're doing. What you're trying to do is anthropomorphize the Tathagata Garbha. When we use the term womb, we use it likened to how you come into this world, but isn't that in fact how you come into this world? And where you come from and how you manifest is not other than the Buddha womb. You know, that's why my Dharma brother Goshin Fashe was saying, you have to know who your mother is. Okay. So if you understand this, then you'll understand that term. You have to dig deeper.
Okay.
Okay. Go back into the womb. Okay. Any other questions? That's it. I'm surprised. Tori again, and then Michael.
So from what your answer to David's question, so does that mean, it kind of relates to what I was asking is, so the Buddha nature, that is, I cannot use my language, but you're talking about the womb. It's not actually where we actually coming from, but it's that place that we're being delivered. So that, in other words, it's kind of like a tool that made it happen. I don't know if I'm getting it right or wrong. But the nature itself, that's the origin of that.
Yeah.
The womb is simply a tool.
What you did was you painted yourself into a corner, and as you were talking, and that's why you stopped, because you realized that. But that's okay when you're starting to talk about how we delivered. In fact, you know, there is no sentient being to deliver, but nevertheless, there is appearances, and all of those appearances are created by the mind. So that is why we call it the womb, because it is in this way. A lot of people think that what we're talking about is the womb of the potential, that this mind can become the Buddha mind. It is not in this way. This mind, this very mind that you're using right now, Tori, is the Buddha mind. It's because you cannot see that because of the ego that you cannot break through. But that's this idea, the revulsion to suffering. Suffering comes from ignorance. So when we go directly to the womb, we begin to look at it, it begins to make sense. And it breaks down the idea that this world is independent, that truly exists. It exists and doesn't exist, but in the sense of Nagarjuna's arguments of apparent reality and absolute reality, which was what Queen Srimala was doing as well. She was pointing those out there, and in a very detailed way. Is not easy to understand her terminology, but that's why I was breaking it down and showing you this is what she's talking about. This was the prevailing doctrine at that time and still is. Okay, so good question. Michael, you're next, I think, and then Kyung Hwang.
One question I have is the Ichantikas, so those who cannot get it, never ever. And the way you described it is that this is impossible. So is the Ichantika concept like a mistake, or does it logically come out of the earlier Buddhism in a sense, or what was the reason? And does it make sense at all, or is it just, does it need to be crossed out?
Buddha nature was a fix for that. And other things where they say, okay, you're out of it. You know, this is kind of like one of the telephone cellular commercial says, you're in, and everybody's in. And it may take a long time for some people to do that, but this cannot work without the inclusion of all consciousness, because then we would have to say that anything that has a sentiency may or may not be a Buddha mind. So then that leaves a gaping hole for philosophers or anybody, and it would destroy the doctrine of Buddhism in a way, or they just try to cover it up. But in this, you could say that was like a patch job or a revision of it, a clarification of that. Yes, that's somebody that would be very difficult to become awakened, but not impossible. Otherwise, it breaks down the whole structure of the theory. And this, in some part, requires you to become a philosopher or religious study person or whatever, to look at things and to say, you know, that you have to kind of understand the theories of it. But even the ones that understand the theories, what they don't understand is the mind itself, because that's out of bounds for them, because they're analyzing it from the theory of samsara, and the mind extends far beyond that. But yeah, it's a good question. You know, it's what naturally will arise because of what we're saying and we're looking at. Okay, Kyung Hwang, unmute it yourself. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Gilbert.
Yes.
This is me. Yeah, I can't change the name, so it's my husband's name. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
An imposter.
Yeah. I have a very simple question. I guess that part I didn't get it. It maybe it's only me. You talk about the question somebody asked over weekend. The word is a dream, right? Why everything matters. Then you said if we watch the roommate in a bad dream, what are we gonna do, right? Then that I didn't get your answer. Your answer is like you still need to wake them up. But I'm thinking like how about the roommate is also a dream? Who we gonna wake up?
Okay, let's
So kind of
say
stuck there.
let's say that you were in a dream and this monster was chasing you and been chasing you for about 10 miles and getting closer. You can feel the breath on the back of your neck, and it's almost getting you. It's already killed everyone in your family, and it's getting closer. Would you want to stay in that dream?
Oh, means.
Or would you want somebody to wake you up? Do you prefer to continue on with this dream that's now killed all your grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, all of your elder family? They're all dead now, and you're there. Would you want to stay in that dream, or would you want somebody to wake you up?
Yeah, I got your point. Like if we're in a dream, we definitely want somebody wake us up, right? But for somebody we already awakened, then there's no people will know that dream.
Because the apparent reality is you're experiencing suffering in the dream, and you're experiencing suffering now. And in fact, hasn't this dream eaten your great-great-grandparents at least, right? They're all dead. So wouldn't you want to get out of a dream like this? Because you're just like a young fly, in a window, you can't get out. And sooner or later you look down and you see all the flies on the windowsill that are dead.
But the question becomes, the awakened people, can they see the dream, or can they see those people even?
Of course.
Not, okay.
Of course, because awaken, depending on the degree of being awake, the first level of awakening is to know that you're in a dream. And then ultimately the level of awakening is that you want to get people out. This is to generate the vow to deliver others. Then you're operating at the level of a bodhisattva. But the bodhisattva, if you remember when the great bodhisattva Avalokitesvara was coursing through, he perceived that all five skandhas are empty. They nevertheless, in awakening, use the Buddha mind perception to see things as a truth and the reality of it. So even though they're in a dream, they know they're in a dream, and they know in the dream the clock is running. The clock is like a time bomb, not for you, but for me. That I realized, like Master Sheng said, I only have a finite amount of breaths. So in this lifetime, I have to do my best to awaken or set into motion the causing conditions for people to awaken the most I can possibly do. This is this is my function. This is Buddha mind. I'm not saying I am the Buddha, there is no Buddha in that way. I utilize wisdom to help others to awaken them. This is how we do that. So the dream, yeah, that dream is real. To you, it's real. And it's causing you to just keep coming back and coming back, ignoring the flies on the windowsill that have already are dead. And some of them, they just freely fly around, not realizing that they're going to die very, very soon. So that's what you kind of need to contemplate so you can see that. There was, let me see. There was one part from Holmgren, from the Chicago part we were talking about, and Holmgren said, and I don't think I covered this part, and said, make effort. Although it may seem futile now, your present efforts constitute the causes for your future enlightenment. So whatever you do now will set forth your enlightenment, but you have to make the effort. And he says, while do not let time pass in vain while wasting energy. So we waste the energy, we want to do things that are not wholesome to us. The sutra says, foolish sentient beings will reside forever in hell as if pleasantly relaxing in a garden. There are no modes of existence worse than their present state, because they're foolish. So when they're like that, they don't understand. Their present state of mind is absolute ignorance. When we sentient beings fit that description, we resemble that remark. Having no idea how horribly terrifying the world really is. I don't know if you've really seen how bad this world is. I know you see it on TV, on CNN, all you have to do is put on some of these programs on TV and you can see how terrifying it is. What the people do, putting plastic injections in their bodies and so forth in the vain effort of trying to make themselves look bigger or their rear bigger. I'm not pointing the finger to anybody, but in any case, it just doesn't make any sense. And it says, having no idea how horribly terrifying the world really is, we never have the least intention of leaving. How awful. So Holmgren's going for the fear factor. If wisdom doesn't get you there, then maybe he can scare you. And so that, I hope I don't have to scare too many of you. It's past Halloween now, so I don't want to scare you guys. But this is the truth, what he's saying. Master Holmgren is being incredibly compassionate, but you can see he has a revulsion to suffering. He has the Buddha mind. So if you see things in this way, it will work for you. Okay. So your question is good. It's an honest question. People have questions about things, and now's the time. And the lecture that I gave is producing these questions. So that's very good. Okay. And then Rong Chen. Amitofo.
Gilbert, my puzzle is when you mentioned about mind has no gap, the gap exists in Saha world, but isn't even Buddha-land is also just a better dream than the Saha world?
Bullshit. No. The Buddha is not a dream. The Buddha is that which creates a dream. Remember, it's very important for you to see what they said. If you remember the last part, Rongshen, it was saying that the Buddha is not is not a person. You know, see if I can try to find that for you. Is the Tathagata is not a substantial self, nor a living being, nor fate, nor a person. So it's showing clearly there is no Buddha consciousness. There is no Buddha in the way that we see things. The Buddha's perception is totally different than how a sentient being perceives in this samsaric world. So there is not that. But that is why the Buddha mind is no different than your mind. The difference is Master Hongren was saying that it's better to have your mind to practice, because you need to get out of this burning building. And so when you can see things in this way, then all of this will become natural to you. But never think that there's a sentient being here and the Buddha's over here. It's not that way. It's all together, okay? So kind of think about that. You might want to kind of revisit this one, because I think you're there, and it's just yourself is kind of coming up and presenting the argument, because it's trying to say, don't pay attention to that man. And so it comes up with this kind of an argument. This is natural. Your question is very natural because it's involved in self-preservation. So it's looking and saying, well, isn't the Buddha just a better version than we are? No, we are an illusion. We've got to face up to that. You know, if we want to awaken, we have to discard the idea of this body and tune to the Buddha itself. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Any other ones? Any questions? Excellent questions tonight. Really good. Yulia, and then we'll get VJ afterwards.
I have a very quick question. Since in this Lion's Roar Sutra, the last words were that that the mind is actually defiled, and this is difficult to comprehend. That's what the Buddha said. So does the sutra later explain why that is?
Yes, we just got a snippet of it. And
Yeah,
actually,
I know, because there is no continuation to the sutra here. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so you probably have to go to the sutra and pick up where that left off, but it will, you know, explain that, you know, that comment. And that crossed my mind. I said, somebody's going to be asking me this. So you're the culprit for that. But because you're going like, and
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
So we'll have to see if we can look at it. Maybe that's some homework that somebody can do. So, you know, send me over, put it on mind work, the continuation of that, so you can find that out. I haven't linked it up, so I can't tell you, you know, specifically, but it is a legitimate question too. So it's like, stay tuned for part 2 for that. So
I'll do my homework then. Okay.
Okay,
thanks.
you see if you can find it. Sometimes all you have to do is type in the words, like a series of the words that are there, and it'll pick up the script if you do a Google search of where this comes from. Okay?
Yep, sounds good. Thanks.
All right. And then VJ, go ahead.
Hi, Gilbert. Thank you for the talk.
Hello.
Enjoyed it a lot. And I just have my mind is working on the word support. The word came up last week and today, the word support. In the Sutra of, I think it was Ashta Sahasrika last week, when the 4th part of it, when you read, it said like Buddha mind, something like has no support. It offers no support. And today, it's the conundrum picked up because you said something about Tathagata Garbha is the basis, is the foundation, it provides support. So my mind is not settling with, it said the Buddha mind has no support, and today Tathagata Garbha is the basis and the support. So what am I missing though? I'm just trying to work on that word support today. It's popping up.
I have to laugh because you can't see the forest for the trees. I'm not belittling you. It's just a natural that your mind would look in this way. When Hui Neng heard that part of the Diamond Sutra that Master Hongren was telling him, it was that one should place their mind in the place where there's no support. Right? If it says the Tathagata Garbha provides support, that means it provides the manifestation of conditions. And so those conditions are temporary. But if we place our mind in the place where there's no support, that is the Buddha mind. That is the one that produces the support for practice. Or the support for ignorance. So it's pointing directly back into the mind. So it's because you looked at it and then you just needed to turn around and you've got it. Do you see it?
I think so.
One of them is a support. It says, place your mind where there's no support. Where is that? In Buddha mind. Right. And then it says the mind creates the support, the conditions. That's the phenomenal mind. So the Diamond Sutra is saying, don't put your mind in conditions. If you put your mind in conditions, that's an illusion. It's temporary. It's the foam in the ocean that you try to support yourself and keep yourself afloat, but it won't work. Sure. So this is how you do it. Okay.
Thank you.
if you don't get it next week, come back and we'll do it again. Okay. But it's like I say, you can't see the forest for the trees because you just have to reverse it and it'll be right there. It's just going to pop into focus. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Michael.
There's a question in the chat. By Celeste. Should I read it?
Yeah,
I think I can summarize it, but it's
Please
about how to read and learn the sutras. Should one just read and let the mind do its job, and I shorten it, so the question is how to contemplate and how do we study, read, and learn with right view?
With the right view, we start by understanding that there's nothing to learn from the sutras, but that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just understand that we keep practicing and studying the sutras until we realize there's nothing to learn. If you do not understand that, then you have to keep studying the sutras in sincerity. So you do not just simply recite the sutras, but you penetrate them. You try to go just as I did in this class. Don't go to the next word until you understand the meaning of what the few words before it meant. When you practice in this way, it will come to you on its own. It is something that is self-revealing. And so when we talk about self-revealing, it's the revealing of the self-nature, not the revealing of the illusory self. It little by little, it will be there. As you begin to use a right view, you'll find that all the sutras say the same thing. That's why they talked about Vayapula sutras, because the sutras are such that they embody the entire understanding, such as the Lotus Sutra, Vatamsaka Sutra, all the Tathagata Garbha Sutras are all Vayapula Sutras, the Mahaparishana Paramita Sutra, the Asta Sutra, all of those, they have within them everything that's there that you need to understand about mind. And then if you read another one, lo and behold, if you are sincere about it, you'll see that they're saying the same thing. Or the treatises of the masters is the same way. It's all kind of this ekayana and returning everything to mind. So this is how you practice. Okay. You're welcome, Celeste. Anything? Oh, Ruth.
Thank you, Gilbert. I still get really stuck on the difference between self-nature and Buddha nature.
It's a different set of words, you know, and different set of letters. Other than that, it's the same thing.
So why do we say, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings of self-nature?
Because that is that conubrum of Nagarjuna, that things are apparent reality and things are absolute reality. In apparent reality, there's these sentient beings, but we qualify it by saying they're illusory sentient beings because they come from the mind. Only the mind is supports them. If the mind is not there, they would be non-existent. So they're non-existent, they're illusory, they appear, but nevertheless, they still are part of mind because they're made from the fabric of mind. It's kind of something very funny because Master Holmgren was saying, I was talking in Chicago, and he was saying the more and more you think about this, the more doctrines you develop. And I think I just did that, you know. So Vijay's going, what? So, but it's okay. Just keep playing with it. Your questions are legitimate. It's just I had to laugh because I'm explaining deeper and deeper doctrines and moving farther and farther away from this two truths. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Well, once we got going, you know, a lot of questions came up and a lot of good questions came. I'm so happy because you would not have questions unless you were sincerely listening. So all of you who thought you had a question and you didn't, you know, ask it in the mind work, okay, the mind work forum, you know, and you can still do that. We accept the Shen Shu's practice. The Shen Shu's are the ones that didn't want anybody to know that they did it, so they wrote it on the wall. You know, and then Hui Ning came and clarified it. But it's okay, you know, and then later on, you're going to have questions. This is deep material. And because a lot of you were listening very, very intently, this stuff's gonna start exploding, you know, during the week. Don't put it down. Just keep using it, thinking about it. All right. This is precious, precious material that you can use. So please keep studying it, you know, and study like things, you know, because right now I'm kind of like helping you ride the bike and kind of like gave you a push. And now you're kind of like wobbling, but still trying to pedal on your own. So please keep doing that. Okay. So we'll see you next week and we'll continue on with this. I just seem to hit a goal vein here. And for me, it's helped me kind of frame a lot of issues that I've been talking about the whole year. And now, you know, this is the payoff time. So hang in there. Okay. Take care, everybody. Amitofo. We'll see you next week. Sue, did you hang in there with us?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. I think this will help you a lot. I was thinking about you while I was talking about it, and I think this will help frame, you know, because I just need to push you just a little bit, and then poof, I'm gonna push you off the mountain. Okay, see you guys later. Time for me to eat. So, thank you, Michael, for you know, doing this. I appreciate that. It was dicey in the beginning, but it turned out all right. So good.
Sorry for the delay.
No, there's no problem. I appreciate you doing it. Take care, everybody. It's good seeing you all. Stay safe.
Right,
And then Harry couldn't come today because he has COVID. So so send some blessings over to him. And he says he doesn't have too bad of a case. And I told him that I guess next week I will tell him, you know, about the meaning of life and stuff. So I'll hold off till next week to reveal that. Okay, later.